Welcome to today's video. In an inevitable twist, a global shift is underway, and at the center of this change is Amazon. Since President Trump imposed high tariffs on partner countries, a wave of impacts has forced Amazon to rethink its global strategy. With stringent tariff policies in place, major companies, especially Amazon, are facing tough decisions as the U.S. supply chain is being altered. While many thought Amazon would stand firm and continue pushing domestic products, the reality is quite different. Amazon is now facing a critical decision: abandoning the U.S. supply chain system and seeking new markets. Is this a sign of a major shift in the global economy? Will Trump's tariff policies completely alter the future of American businesses? If you agree with this shift and believe Amazon may face major challenges from the tariffs, leave a 1 in the comments below. If you disagree, leave a 0. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. And now, let's dive into this story. Over the years, Amazon has solidified its position as a global giant in e-commerce, not only due to its speed and convenience, but also because of its strategy to maximize supply chain efficiency in order to reduce costs. However, in early 2025, a major turning point occurred for Amazon and many other companies worldwide when the administration of President Donald Trump decided to impose a series of tariffs on imports from other countries, particularly from China. While this was not the first time Trump had introduced strong protectionist trade policies, the impact of these tariffs led to a wide range of changes that few could have anticipated. In early 2025, Trump's new tariffs were applied at a rate of up to 10% on many types of products, particularly goods imported from China. However, this did not stop there, as the tariff on some items, such as machinery and industrial equipment, reached as high as 145%. This policy caused a major shock to the U.S. economy, increasing product prices for consumers and reducing the competitiveness of many companies, particularly in the e-commerce sector. Amazon, with its vast global supply chain, faced unprecedented challenges as imports from China became subject to higher tariffs. Popular items offered by Amazon, ranging from electronics, household goods, to consumer products, were all directly affected by these tariffs. Added to the disruptions caused by congestion at major ports such as Los Angeles and Long Beach, Amazon had to quickly find ways to adapt in order to maintain business operations effectively. Unlike other companies that were struggling to adapt, Amazon proactively sought solutions to mitigate the impact of the tariffs. One of the key strategies Amazon adopted was restructuring its global supply chain. Instead of relying too heavily on Chinese suppliers, Amazon began shifting its partnerships to other countries such as Mexico, Vietnam, India, and other Southeast Asian nations. This was a smart move, not only helping Amazon avoid high tariffs, but also diversifying its supply sources, reducing risks, and optimizing costs. In addition, Amazon also implemented changes in how it shipped goods as U.S. ports could no longer handle the vast volume of goods as before. Instead of relying solely on traditional ports, Amazon invested in warehouse systems and automated distribution centers to reduce dependence on disrupted supply chains. One of the most noticeable impacts of the tariff war was the severe congestion at U.S. ports, particularly the Los Angeles and Long Beach ports, which are two of the most important transportation hubs in the U.S. Restrictions on imports, combined with labor and infrastructure issues, led to delays in shipments, higher transportation costs, and made it difficult for Amazon to ensure timely delivery of products to consumers. This not only affected Amazon, but also negatively impacted small businesses and other retailers, raising concerns about a decline in consumer confidence regarding the stability of goods supply. Moreover, tariffs not only affected Amazon, but also directly impacted the U.S. economy and other industries. U.S. manufacturers and retailers faced rising production costs due to the increase in raw material prices from imports, causing product prices to surge and forcing companies to cut costs, lay off employees, or seek new markets. These changes not only affected companies' revenues, but also impacted the livelihoods of millions of American citizens. The tariff war and the changes in the global supply chain that Amazon had to face serve as valuable lessons for businesses, especially those in the e-commerce and manufacturing sectors. One of the most significant lessons that can be drawn is the necessity of diversifying supply chains and not relying too heavily on a single market. In the context of a global economy that is always fluctuating and full of risks, building a flexible supply chain that can quickly adapt to changes is a critical factor that helps businesses overcome challenges. Additionally, the second lesson is the importance of quickly and proactively adapting to changes in policies and markets. Amazon has shown that instead of standing still and dealing with difficulties, companies can find new opportunities from those challenges. Seeking out new markets, shifting partnerships to other countries, and investing in modern technology are ways that businesses can overcome obstacles and maintain sustainable growth. The tariff policies imposed by President Donald Trump's administration have caused profound changes in the global trade environment, particularly for large companies like Amazon. The 10% tariff on all imported goods to the U.S., combined with the steep tariffs of up to 145% on items imported from China, created a major shock to the global economy. This not only affected domestic manufacturing companies, but also had a significant impact on large businesses like Amazon, which rely on global supply chains to deliver products to customers at reasonable prices. Electronics, clothing, household goods, popular consumer products that Amazon sells are mostly sourced from China and other Asian countries. With such high tariffs, companies not only face higher import costs, but also the risk of rising product prices, which would affect both their profits and consumer purchasing power. With the high tariff rates, Amazon and other major companies were faced with a difficult choice. They could either absorb the increased costs or pass those costs on to customers, raising product prices. While Amazon is better positioned to handle these costs than many other companies due to its scale and optimized operations, this still posed a tough challenge because one of the core factors behind Amazon's success is its ability to maintain reasonable and accessible prices for consumers. Raising prices could directly impact demand, causing many customers to reconsider their purchases. This could reduce Amazon's revenue while creating an opportunity for competitors to offer lower prices or seek alternative markets for their products. On the other hand, Amazon cannot simply pass on all the costs to consumers without damaging its brand and customer relationships. Maintaining stable prices amidst rising tariffs requires Amazon to explore other strategies, such as reducing operating costs, optimizing the supply chain, or restructuring investments to minimize losses. The U.S. tariff policy not only affected Amazon, but also had a series of ripple effects on the global trade platform. Major industries, ranging from electronics, clothing, household goods to automobiles, felt the negative impact of these tariffs. Chinese manufacturers, who supply a large quantity of consumer products to U.S. companies, faced challenges in exporting to the U.S., forcing many supply chains to look for alternative sources. Companies in the U.S. and other countries also faced rising production costs due to the increased prices of imported raw materials. This affected not only small businesses, but also created significant challenges for large corporations. Industries such as electronics, apparel, and household goods, key export categories from China to the U.S., were forced to adjust their business strategies to cope with changes in the trade environment. Some companies shifted their manufacturing to countries like Mexico, Vietnam, and India, where tariffs are lower and production costs may be more competitive. With these changes, Amazon and other large companies are being forced to adjust their supply chains, seeking alternative sources to avoid high tariffs. Amazon has started collaborating with other countries, especially Mexico and Vietnam, to minimize the impact of tariffs and maintain efficient business operations. However, despite the shift in supply chains, rebuilding new networks of supply is not simple and requires significant investments in both time and resources. The new U.S. tariff policy has required companies like Amazon to completely alter their business strategies. Not only have they had to change their supply chain structures, but companies also had to adjust their operational processes and manage distribution channels. One of the biggest changes that Amazon implemented was investing in technology and automation to reduce labor costs and optimize shipping processes. This way, Amazon could maintain competitive pricing for its products while minimizing the impact of the tariffs. Companies also had to adjust their marketing, distribution, and warehouse management strategies. For Amazon, expanding warehouses in countries that are not subject to tariffs or have lower tariffs is an important strategy to reduce operating costs and improve product distribution efficiency. Meanwhile, maintaining a global distribution system is no longer an advantage, but has become a challenge that needs to be addressed with speed and flexibility. As the U.S. tariff policies forced Amazon and other large companies to face unforeseen impacts, they were compelled to find solutions to minimize the negative effects and maintain their competitive edge. This was especially true as China, a key player in Amazon's global supply chain, had become the primary source of many products. To cope with the high tariffs imposed by President Trump on goods imported from China, Amazon decided to shift its supply chain strategy. One of the most important decisions was that Amazon canceled large contracts with suppliers in China and sought new partners in other countries. Mexico, India, and Vietnam were chosen as new destinations in this strategic shift. These countries not only have low production costs, but also offer attractive tariff incentives, helping Amazon avoid the high U.S. tariffs on goods from China. This change was not an easy task. For many years, China had become the world's factory, providing cheap goods in large quantities. However, with the new tariff policy, Amazon had no choice but to look for alternative sources to maintain a stable and efficient supply chain. This was a difficult challenge, as transitioning from old partners to new ones was not only costly, but also involved hurdles related to quality and timely delivery. While China had been a key partner for Amazon in its supply chain, this strategic shift opened up major opportunities for other countries, especially Mexico, India, and Vietnam. These countries each have their own advantages in terms of labor costs, infrastructure development, and trade relations with the U.S. Mexico became one of the primary destinations in Amazon's supply chain restructuring strategy. With its proximity to the U.S. and strong trade relations between the U.S. and Mexico, the country could provide products at low costs and fast shipping times, helping reduce wait times and increase Amazon's competitiveness. India also became an important partner in Amazon's new supply chain. The country not only has a large labor force and reasonable production costs, but is also developing rapidly in terms of technology and infrastructure. With thriving tech hubs such as Bengaluru and Hyderabad, India has attracted many major companies, including Amazon, to shift production from China. Vietnam emerged as one of the most prominent countries in Amazon's search for alternative supply sources. With favorable tariff policies and low labor costs, Vietnam became an attractive destination for companies looking to reduce production costs and avoid high tariffs. Along with the development of its manufacturing sector, Vietnam could provide consumer goods, from electronics to household products, with high quality and competitive prices. To execute this supply chain shift strategy, Amazon had to invest a massive amount of money. Billions of dollars were spent to restructure the company's logistics system and build new warehouses in the countries where Amazon was shifting its production, particularly in Mexico, India, and Vietnam. Building new infrastructure not only included warehouses, but also distribution centers and new transportation systems to ensure that goods could reach consumers quickly and efficiently. This helped Amazon reduce its dependence on U.S. ports and lower shipping costs from the new production points to consumers. In addition to building new infrastructure, Amazon also had to invest in advanced technology to manage its global supply chain. Automation systems and robots were deployed to optimize the goods distribution process, reduce labor costs, and ensure that products could be delivered to customers on time. This was a key part of Amazon's strategic shift, allowing the company to maintain its competitive position in a rapidly changing global trade environment. When President Trump's tariff policies were implemented, major U.S. ports, particularly the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, faced a significant decline in activity. These two ports, which were critical hubs for shipping goods from China and other countries to the U.S., saw a dramatic reduction in the volume of imports. One of the main reasons for this decline was the high tariffs on goods from China, forcing many companies to look for alternative supply sources from countries like Mexico, Vietnam, and India. As the flow of goods from China sharply decreased, dock workers, truck drivers, and warehouse staff were faced with unemployment or reduced income. Shipping companies, warehouses, and logistics service providers were also impacted, as they no longer had enough business to sustain their operations as before. This situation not only reduced workers' incomes, but also lowered the operational efficiency of the ports and transportation infrastructure, creating a chain of economic problems in the regions dependent on these ports. The decline in activity at U.S. ports not only reflected a weakening supply chain, but also had negative effects on the U.S. economy as a whole. The loss of revenue from shipping and cargo handling activities made it difficult for many businesses to maintain stable profits, increasing instability in the labor market. Tariffs did not only affect the shipping industry, but also deeply impacted the retail sector, with large companies like Walmart, Target, and Home Depot facing rising prices and shortages of goods. Imported goods from China, which made up a large portion of these retailers' inventory, became more expensive as tariffs were imposed, forcing companies to raise product prices. This put significant pressure on consumers as the prices of goods increased, leading to reduced purchasing power and a series of ripple effects for the economy. As a result, retail companies were forced to confront a supply crisis. Many products, especially consumer goods and household items, became scarce because companies struggled to import goods from Chinese suppliers. These items not only became harder to find, but also faced skyrocketing prices, making it difficult for consumers to access them. Additionally, the price increases also impacted employment at retail stores. Companies had to cut costs or even lay off employees to maintain profits in the face of rising production costs. Raising prices also meant companies could not retain customers in the long term, as they faced increasing competition from rivals. One of the biggest impacts of the tariffs was on the lives of American consumers. As prices for goods climbed, consumers had to reduce spending on non-essential items, directly affecting the standard of living for many households. This was especially true for those with lower incomes, who were hit hardest as essential items like food, household goods, and clothing became more expensive. Furthermore, companies also faced declining profits as they could no longer keep prices low. Industries, particularly large retailers, had to find ways to adjust their strategies to cope with the situation. Some companies turned to alternative supply sources, but this did not immediately solve the problems of product shortages and rising prices. This crisis was not just an issue of rising prices, but also a matter of employment. The shortage of goods, coupled with companies having to raise prices, weakened the U.S. consumer economy. These impacts have been long-lasting, adding to economic and social instability. If you agree with the negative impacts of tariffs on U.S. ports and the economy in general, leave a 1 in the comments below. If you have a different opinion, feel free to leave a 0. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support our channel. And now, let's continue to follow the unfolding developments in this story. When the United States imposed high tariffs on goods imported from China, many other countries quickly seized the opportunity to become new manufacturing hubs. Countries such as Mexico, Vietnam, and India emerged as key alternative destinations in the global supply chain. The shift of companies, especially Amazon, to these nations not only helped reduce the impact of tariffs, but also opened up new economic opportunities for these countries. Mexico rapidly positioned itself as a manufacturing center thanks to its close proximity to the U.S. and favorable trade policies, particularly under the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Manufacturing in Mexico allows companies to cut transportation costs and avoid the high tariffs when exporting to the U.S. This move not only benefits American companies, but has also significantly boosted Mexico's economy, creating millions of new jobs for local workers. Vietnam has also become a major player in the global supply chain. Thanks to low labor costs, consistent product quality, and tariff advantages under various free trade agreements, Vietnam has attracted major investors, especially in electronics, footwear, and apparel manufacturing. Companies like Nike and Apple have shifted parts of their production from China to Vietnam to mitigate risks from U.S. tariffs. This has greatly strengthened Vietnam's economy and created more job opportunities for its citizens. India has not been left out of this trend. The country boasts a massive labor force and low production costs, while also ramping up infrastructure and technological reforms to attract multinational corporations. Manufacturers of electronics components, textiles, and consumer products have been moving operations to India, turning the country into an increasingly important partner in the global supply chain. However, While these emerging economies are growing and gaining new opportunities, the U.S. has faced several challenges. One of the most evident impacts has been a gradual loss of competitiveness in global trade. Previously, the U.S. was a global leader in manufacturing and exporting goods. But now, by imposing tariffs on major trading partners like China, many manufacturers are being pushed to seek alternative markets and partners. This shift has caused the U.S. to lose ground not only in manufacturing, but also in its influence over the global supply chain. Large corporations, especially in sectors like electronics, textiles, and food processing, have increasingly relocated their factories and facilities away from the U.S. to countries with lower costs and fewer trade barriers. As a result, the U.S. is losing opportunities in key industries and becoming more dependent on imports from other countries. One of the direct consequences of the tariff policy has been a retail and consumer crisis in the U.S. The rise in product prices due to high tariffs has caused American households to face rapid increases in the cost of consumer goods. Essential items such as food, clothing, and household products have become more expensive, placing a heavy burden on household budgets, especially for low-income families. Shipping delays have also become a serious issue. Transportation companies and logistics service providers have struggled to maintain timely delivery due to congestion at ports and disruptions in the supply chain. This has made it difficult for products to reach consumers on time, leading to growing dissatisfaction and damaging the reputation of major retailers. These prolonged effects have not only hurt consumer behavior, but also slowed down business activity in the retail sector. Companies like Walmart, Target, and Home Depot have faced declining revenues due to high prices and product shortages. This has further worsened the employment situation in retail, as companies are forced to cut staff or reduce working hours to save costs. The economic crisis caused by tariffs has not only affected major industries, but has spread across all aspects of consumer life. High prices and product shortages have impacted everything, from families' daily spending to services like transportation and tourism. These challenges have become even more severe as the U.S. continues to struggle with inflation and supply-demand imbalances. As product prices rise, consumers are forced to cut back on non-essential purchases, reducing demand for goods and services outside of basic needs. Service sectors like travel, entertainment, and dining have seen sharp declines in customer traffic, forcing businesses in these areas to adapt quickly to the tough economic environment. One of the biggest questions today is whether the U.S. retail industry can maintain stability amid rising prices and declining profits. The retail sector has gone through a challenging period, ranging from intense competition between traditional retailers and e-commerce platforms like Amazon to the impacts of tariff policies and disruptions in global supply chains. As product prices increase and many goods become scarce, retailers face rising costs and changes in American consumer behavior. Many retail companies have reported declines in revenue and profit as they struggle with higher costs and weakening consumer purchasing power. Stores are being forced to adjust pricing strategies and offer promotions to attract customers. But whether these efforts can compensate for the drop in demand remains an open question. Shifting to online sales and the rapid growth of home delivery services may offer some relief to the retail sector, but they also intensify competition and create difficulties for traditional brick-and-mortar stores. A key concern is whether consumers will continue to tolerate higher prices. As the cost of living rises, consumers may reduce spending on non-essential items, which would directly impact the revenues of retail companies. However, if companies are unable to lower prices or improve service quality, the likelihood of losing customers remains high. As prices continue to climb and shipping delays become routine, American consumers are being forced to make tough decisions. Will consumers continue accepting higher prices for basic goods? Or will they start seeking alternative suppliers or cut back on non-essential spending? In this context, consumer behavior will become a decisive factor for the economy. If consumers begin drastically cutting spending, it could trigger a negative economic spiral in the U.S., where both retailers and manufacturers struggle to maintain stable profits. Consumer tolerance for rising prices will depend heavily on how well companies can maintain value and convenience. If prices rise too steeply and delivery delays become more severe, consumers may look for alternatives, affecting businesses and the global economy as a whole. Another important question is whether the United States is sacrificing long-term influence in favor of short-term gains. The tariff policies and protectionist trade strategies implemented by the U.S. have driven many countries to seek new trade partners and alternative supply sources. While this may bring short-term benefits to domestic companies, reducing dependence on other nations could ultimately harm America's long-term influence in the global economy. Despite its large-scale economy, the U.S. remains highly dependent on international trade. Protectionist policies may cause the U.S. to miss out on opportunities to collaborate with key trade partners and could also weaken its economic and political relationships with other countries. In the long run, cutting off trade ties and imposing tariffs may result in the U.S. losing its standing as a global economic hub. Maintaining that position will require the U.S. to strike a balance between safeguarding short-term interests and preserving its global economic influence and connections. Furthermore, emerging economies such as Mexico, Vietnam, and India are also placing increasing pressure on the U.S. to maintain its status and global influence. As these countries become major manufacturing and export centers, whether the U.S. can sustain its competitive advantage and long-term influence remains an unanswered question. Amazon's transformation and restructuring in response to tariff policies and global supply chain disruptions highlight the company's remarkable adaptability in a rapidly changing world. Through a flexible and strategic approach, Amazon not only weathered significant challenges, but also seized new opportunities to expand and strengthen its position in the global marketplace. By restructuring its supply chain and shifting partnerships to countries like Mexico, Vietnam, and India, Amazon was able to maintain its growth trajectory while minimizing the negative impact of external pressures such as tariffs and supply chain congestion. Amazon has demonstrated that in a world full of uncertainty and volatility, being proactive and flexible in strategy is crucial for survival and long-term success. From its origins as an online bookstore to becoming a global powerhouse, Amazon has consistently shown resilience, expanded its global reach, and maintained its competitive edge. The restructuring of Amazon and the broader effects of tariff policies offers a new perspective on globalization and the structure of 21st century trade. Tariffs and trade barriers not only force multinational corporations to rethink their operations, but also raise deeper questions about the nature of globalization amid increasingly complex political and economic dynamics. While protectionist policies may provide short-term gains for some nations, they also expose the vulnerabilities and risks of the global trade system. This is a critical moment for businesses to reevaluate their dependence on global supply chains, international markets, and their ability to respond to economic shocks. While companies and countries may seek to reduce reliance on a single trade partner, diversification and adaptability are the real keys to maintaining stability and growth in today's unpredictable global trade environment. From Amazon's supply chain shift to the adjustment of tariff strategies, it's clear that changes in the global trade system are both a challenge and an opportunity. Amazon is a prime example of how fast adaptation and smart business strategy are essential for overcoming obstacles and continuing to grow. However, along with these shifts, it's important that we reflect on the long-term impact of protectionism and supply chain realignment on the global economy. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a sub to support the channel. If you agree with the change in Amazon's strategy and the impact of tariff policies, don't hesitate to leave the number 1 in the comment section. If you don't agree, leave the number 0. Share your opinion and follow us for the next stories. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.